Jake had recently taken up a new hobby, fishing. He spent most of his weekends out on the water, and sometimes he even sat there for hours at a time. One day, he decided to try out a new lake that was a few hours away, and he was really excited about it. What he didn't know was that his excitement would soon change to horror. There, he would make a catch that he was going to remember for the rest of his life. Jake's face lit up when he felt the rod bend. Finally! He had been waiting for hours without making a single catch, and he almost thought there was something wrong with this lake. He was almost ready to give up and go home, but now his patience was rewarded. Or, well, rewarded might not be the right choice of word here, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. What Jake really should have done was throw his rod into the water, get on land immediately, and go home. But of course, he didn't do this, as he had no idea that this particular catch was going to end in disaster. He was too excited to see what kind of fish he had caught, but soon enough, his excitement would turn into panic. He reeled the line in as quickly as he could, not wanting to wait a second longer. When the fish finally came to the surface, Jake grabbed it and put it in the bucket next to him. He always returned all the animals he caught into the water, but not before taking a good look at them. And this fish, it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Jake carefully picked it up and held it in his hands, turning it around to get a closer look at it from all angles. "What are you?" he whispered, and he quickly put it back in the bucket. He hadn't been fishing for a very long time yet, but he recognized most of the fish that he caught. However, this one was something entirely new. He wiped his hands and grabbed his phone, wanting to look it up online. He soon found out that this was probably some kind of flying fish, but he could not find anything about this exact breed. He scoured the internet and looked through every website he could find, but he found nothing that answered his question. Finally, Jake decided to take an easier approach. He took a picture of the fish and posted it on an online fishing forum, asking if anyone knew what type of fish this was. He put his phone back in his pocket, put a worm onto his fishing hook, and threw the line back into the water. Now that he knew the lake wasn't empty after all, he was willing to give it another shot while he waited. He was going to keep the strange flying fish in the bucket for a while. It was the most interesting catch he had ever made, and he wanted to enjoy it at least a little longer. However, he was so focused on looking for movement in the lake and trying to catch another fish that he forgot about the flying fish for a while. About an hour later, he finally remembered to check his phone again. As he unlocked it, he saw that he had a few notifications about comments on the picture that he had posted earlier, and he smiled. Yes! He quickly opened them and started reading, hoping that someone had answered his question. He was a little bit disappointed when he saw that most of the comments were from people who were just as curious about the fish as he was. "Wow, I've never seen this before," someone commented, and another user asked, "Please give us an update when you find out what this is." But there was one comment that caught Jake's attention. One user named Mark had commented, "Get away from there now! What do you think you were doing?" Jake frowned as he read this, and he decided to send him a private message. He had no idea what it meant, but it was certainly a strange thing to comment. He texted, "Hey, I saw your comment on my post. What do you mean by that?" He waited for a few minutes, occasionally glancing at the fish in his bucket, but the person did not reply. Jake sighed and told himself, "It's probably just a prank. And anyway, if I don't catch anything else in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to search for a different spot." The day wasn't over yet, and he still had plenty of time to start over somewhere else. 10 minutes went by without any movement at all. This was when Jake realized that it was completely quiet around him. The usual chirping of birds that he could hear around him whenever he went fishing was missing now. He hadn't noticed before because he was so focused on that strange fish, but now he couldn't ignore it anymore. He decided that it was time to leave, but first he needed to check his phone one last time. Of course, he was going to return that strange fish to this same lake before leaving and finding a new fishing spot. But he hadn't forgotten about that weird comment yet. He had ignored it at first, but now he couldn't help but wonder what it was supposed to mean. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw that he had received a reply. It read, "Are you blind? Get away from that place." Jake frowned and he texted back, "Why? What are you talking about?" He clicked on Mark's profile, curious to find out more about him, but he was distracted when he received a new message. It was him again. Mark had written, "Listen to me. You don't know what you're doing. Just get away from there, and whatever you do, do not touch that fish." Jake chuckled nervously when he read this because he definitely had already touched that fish. He quickly typed his reply and sent it. "Can you tell me what is going on? Why are you saying that?" Jake stared at his phone, perplexed by Mark's alarming messages. "You need to leave, now," Mark had insisted. Jake's fingers flew over the keyboard, typing, "Can you explain? What's so dangerous about this fish?" But the only response was a notification that Mark had blocked him. Jake's confusion deepened. Who was this Mark, and why such urgency and secrecy? The mystery hung in the air, thick and unsettling. Sitting by the serene lake, Jake's mind whirled with frustration. Mark's cryptic warnings clashed with the peaceful setting. "It's gotta be a prank," Jake muttered to himself, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. Yet, a part of him couldn't help but wonder about the truth behind those frantic messages. He looked at the calm waters, trying to reconcile the beauty of the scene with the ominous words from a stranger. Taking a deep breath, Jake decided to let go of the strange encounter. He gently scooped the mysterious fish from the bucket, observing its unique features one last time before releasing it back into the lake. The fish swam away swiftly, disappearing into the depths. Jake watched it go, a sense of relief washing over him. It was time to leave the peculiarities of the day behind and head back to the comfort of his home. As Jake drove home, the events of the day replayed in his mind. The excitement of catching the strange fish, the unsettling quiet of the lake, and Mark's bizarre messages. Despite the day's oddities, he felt a sense of accomplishment. Releasing the fish had been the right thing to do, he thought. The road stretched ahead, a familiar path back to normalcy, away from the mysteries of the unknown. Arriving home, Jake carefully put away his fishing gear, his thoughts still lingering on the day's adventure. The image of the peculiar fish and the silent lake stayed with him, an unsolved riddle. He shrugged off the feeling of unease, convincing himself that tomorrow would be another ordinary day. Unbeknownst to him, the consequences of his encounter with the strange fish were just beginning to unfold. The first rays of sunlight peeked through Jake's window, but the serene morning quickly turned into distress. Jake awoke to an alarming sight. His hands were red, swollen, and itching unbearably. Confusion and panic set in as he tried to recall any unusual contact or allergies, but his mind kept drifting back to the previous day's fishing trip and the strange fish he had caught and released. Without wasting a moment, Jake rushed to the nearest doctor. The drive seemed endless, his hands burning with an itch that wouldn't subside. As he entered the clinic, his sense of urgency was palpable. He explained his symptoms to the doctor, who examined his inflamed hands with a furrowed brow. The sudden onset and severity of the reaction left Jake anxiously seeking answers. The doctor, puzzled by the nature of Jake's symptoms, scratched his head in bewilderment. "I haven't seen anything quite like this before," he admitted. Then, with a thoughtful pause, he suggested consulting a veterinarian. Jake's confusion deepened. "A vet?" he questioned, but the doctor insisted, citing the possibility of an unusual aquatic allergen given Jake's recent fishing expedition. Dr. Emily, a seasoned veterinarian with a keen eye for aquatic creatures, greeted Jake warmly. As she listened to Jake recount his fishing trip, her interest piqued noticeably. She asked pointed questions about the lake, the fish, and even the overall environment that day. Jake noticed her intense focus, especially when he described the peculiar fish he had encountered. Dr. Emily's curiosity grew as Jake detailed his experience with the strange fish. "Did you notice anything else unusual about the lake that day?" she asked, her tone suggesting a deeper layer of concern. Jake recalled the eerie silence, the absence of birds, and the unsettling stillness of the lake, adding more pieces to the puzzling situation he now found himself in. Jake recounted his fishing trip in detail to Dr. Emily. He spoke of his initial excitement, the long wait, and the eventual catch of the strange fish. His voice grew softer as he described the unsettling quiet at the lake, a silence so profound it was almost tangible. He emphasized how different this trip felt compared to his previous experiences, a sentiment that seemed to resonate with Dr. Emily. As Jake described the fish, Dr. Emily's attention never wavered. He detailed its unique features, unlike any fish he'd seen before. Her concern grew with each word, the fish's unusual appearance, the way it moved, even its texture. She scribbled notes rapidly, her expression turning from curiosity to worry. Jake could sense that his tale was more than just a fisherman's story. Jake then spoke of the eerie silence that enveloped the lake, a stillness so profound it felt unnatural. He also mentioned his online encounter with Mark, the mysterious user who'd urgently warned him to leave the lake. This part of his story seemed to intrigue Dr. Emily the most, as she paused to ask additional questions about the interaction, her brows furrowed in thought. Dr. Emily began to piece together the puzzle. She connected Jake's symptoms to his contact with the strange fish and the peculiar circumstances of the lake. Her expression grew serious as she considered the potential implications. "There could be a correlation here," she murmured, more to herself than to Jake, as the pieces of the puzzle slowly fit together in her mind. With a tone of caution, Dr. Emily advised Jake to avoid any contact with water bodies and fish until they had more answers. "We must wait for the test results," she stressed. The seriousness in her voice made it clear this was not a mere suggestion, but a necessary precaution. Jake nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation, his mind racing with unanswered questions. Back at home, Jake couldn't shake off the eerie silence of the lake from his mind. It haunted him, that unnatural quiet as if the lake itself was holding its breath. The more he thought about it, the more he felt a deep sense of unease settling over him, a feeling that something was amiss, something he couldn't quite grasp, but which lingered in the back of his mind. While awaiting the test results, Jake's mind kept replaying the fishing trip. The mysterious fish with its peculiar features, the way it had felt in his hands, and the strange warnings from Mark. Each memory added to his growing sense of unease. He hoped the results would offer some explanation, some rational understanding of the bizarre events he had experienced. As the hours passed, Jake's concern grew. Mark's cryptic warnings about the fish echoed in his mind, mingling with his own worries about the strange symptoms. The unanswered questions multiplied, and with them, a growing anxiety. What if there was something truly dangerous about that fish? The thought lingered, unsettling and persistent. Determined to find answers, Jake decided to return to the lake. He needed to see if there was anything he had missed, any clue that could explain the fish's peculiarities and his own condition. The drive back was filled with a mix of dread and determination. He needed to understand, to make sense of the strange events that had unfolded since his last visit. As Jake arrived at the lake, the same eerie silence greeted him. It was as if the lake was frozen in time, devoid of the usual sounds of nature. The stillness was unsettling, and as he looked out over the water, a chill ran down his spine. The emptiness of the lake seemed to mirror his own growing fears, amplifying the sense that something was not right. Standing by the lake's edge, Jake felt a profound quietness enveloping the area. It was as if nature itself was holding its breath, creating an atmosphere laden with mystery. This silence, so different from his previous visits, deepened the enigma surrounding the lake. It was as if the water held secrets, secrets that were slowly beginning to surface in Jake's mind. As Jake gazed at the still waters, the image of the strange fish surfaced in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that his catch might have been more than just an oddity. The silence, the fish, the warning from Mark. They all seemed to be pieces of a puzzle he couldn't yet solve, leaving him with more questions than answers. Jake's contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of a group of environmental inspectors at the lake. Dressed in official gear, they surveyed the area with a sense of purpose. Jake watched them curiously, wondering what brought them to this remote place. Their presence was unexpected, and he felt a flicker of hope that they might shed light on the lake's mysteries. The inspectors approached Jake, introducing themselves and explaining their investigation into suspected illegal activities in the area. Intrigued, Jake shared his experience, especially about the peculiar fish he had caught. The inspectors listened intently, their interest visibly piqued by his story. It seemed that Jake's encounter with the strange fish might be a crucial piece of their investigation. Encouraged by their interest, Jake pulled out his phone and showed them the photo of the fish. He watched their expressions closely, expecting curiosity, but instead he saw a sudden seriousness take over their faces. The inspectors exchanged a glance, their concern evident. Jake's heart raced, realizing that his mysterious catch might hold more significance than he ever imagined. The inspectors' shocked reaction to the photo of the fish sent a wave of fear through Jake. Their faces, once composed, now mirrored a mix of disbelief and concern. "We've never seen anything like this," one of them muttered. Jake's hands trembled slightly, holding the phone. The gravity of the situation began to dawn on him, each second deepening his worry. Recognizing the urgency in their voices, the inspectors advised Jake to contact Dr. Emily immediately. "This could be serious," they emphasized. The urgency in their tone made Jake's heart race. The reality that his encounter with the fish might have significant consequences was becoming more apparent, stirring a blend of anxiety and confusion within him. Without delay, Jake called Dr. Emily, his voice tense as he relayed the inspector's concerns. She listened intently, her tone shifting to one of urgency. "We need to act fast," she said, preparing for a deeper examination of the situation. Jake felt a mix of relief and apprehension at her readiness to investigate further, hoping for some clarity amid the growing uncertainty. The inspectors informed Dr. Emily about their suspicions regarding the fish, highlighting its potential danger. As they spoke, the weight of the situation settled heavily on Jake's shoulders. Dr. Emily's response was grave, her words careful, yet filled with a sense of pressing importance. The conversation marked a turning point, revealing just how critical the situation had become. Together, Jake, the inspectors, and Dr. Emily acknowledged the need for swift action. The mystery of the fish's nature and its potential threat to human health and the environment required urgent attention. They resolved to uncover the truth, each aware of the responsibility they now shared to prevent any further harm. The quest for answers had become more than just a personal endeavour for Jake. It was now a mission of public safety. In Dr. Emily's lab, a sense of urgency filled the air. Jake, accompanied by the team, listened intently as they planned an immediate mission to scour the lake for any remaining fish of the same kind. The goal was clear: find and safely remove these creatures to prevent any further incidents. Jake felt a surge of determination as the mission was set into motion. As the mission unfolded, Jake was haunted by the memory of Mark's urgent warnings. "Get away from that fish," Mark had exclaimed. Now, those words echoed in Jake's mind, a haunting prelude to the current crisis. He was filled with regret, wishing he had heeded the warning sooner. The weight of responsibility for what was now unfolding was heavy on his shoulders. The team, led by Dr. Emily and the inspectors, began a detailed search around the lake. Equipped with specialized gear, they meticulously scanned the waters, determined to find any trace of the unusual fish. Jake watched, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and apprehension as the team moved with precision and focus, knowing that every moment counted. Motivated by a desire to make amends, Jake threw himself into the mission with unwavering determination. He assisted the team wherever he could, scouring the lake's edges and aiding in the search efforts. His actions were driven by a deep-seated need to rectify his earlier oversight, to contribute meaningfully to resolving the crisis that had begun with his catch. The team's search was intense and thorough, revealing surprising elements of the lake's ecosystem. Each discovery added complexity to the mystery surrounding the fish. Jake observed, fascinated and anxious, as the team collected samples and made notes. The lake, once a place of leisure and solitude, had transformed into a site of critical investigation, holding secrets yet to be uncovered. After exhaustive research, the team reached a startling conclusion. The strange fish Jake had caught was the only one of its kind in the lake. This revelation sent ripples of shock through everyone involved. The lake, once thought to be a thriving ecosystem, held a secret that was both intriguing and alarming. Jake stood there, processing the news, a mix of astonishment and unease washing over him. The mystery deepened as further investigation revealed the fish was part of a secretive genetic experiment. This experiment, aimed at creating a new species of aquatic life, had evidently gone awry. The revelation sent a chill down Jake's spine. The fish he had casually caught and released was at the center of a scientific endeavor shrouded in secrecy and controversy. The team discovered evidence of illegal genetic experiments conducted in a hidden facility near the lake. These experiments, linked to the unusual fish and its mutations, painted a picture of scientific ambition crossing ethical boundaries. Jake listened, horrified, as the inspectors detailed their findings, realizing the gravity of what he had stumbled upon during his seemingly innocent fishing trip. It became clear that the fish Jake had caught was not just an unusual species, but a dangerous mutation. It carried pathogens potentially harmful to humans and the environment. The information hit Jake hard. The implications were vast and disturbing. The mysterious symptoms he experienced were directly linked to his contact with this genetically altered creature. Dr. Emily confirmed that Jake's alarming symptoms were a reaction to the pathogens from the experimental fish. This connection underscored the severity of the situation, elevating it from a personal health concern to an environmental crisis. Jake sat there, feeling a sense of responsibility and urgency as the reality of the threat posed by his catch became starkly clear. With the lake now devoid of its mysterious inhabitant, Jake stood at its edge, his heart heavy with reflection. His thoughts lingered on the unintended consequences of his catch and the broader implications of the clandestine experiment. The tranquility of the water belied the turmoil he felt inside, a poignant reminder of the unforeseen impacts of human interference with nature. Authorities swiftly acted to close down the secret facility responsible for the illegal experiments. As Jake watched the facility being shut down, he felt a sense of closure. The end of these dangerous activities marked a victory for environmental safety, but it also served as a stark reminder of the ethical boundaries that had been crossed in the name of scientific advancement. As the individuals responsible for the experiments were taken into custody, Jake stood by, deep in thought. The arrest symbolized a measure of justice, but it also prompted him to reflect on the delicate balance of nature and the impact of human intervention. The experience had opened his eyes to the complexities and consequences of meddling with natural ecosystems. Transformed by his experiences, Jake found himself adopting a new role as an advocate for responsible fishing practices and environmental conservation. His encounter with the fish and the ensuing events had reshaped his worldview, instilling in him a strong desire to protect and preserve the natural world. He committed himself to spreading awareness and promoting sustainable interaction with nature. In the following weeks, the lake began to show subtle signs of recovery. This rejuvenation symbolized a new beginning, not just for the environment, but also for Jake. As he watched life slowly return to the lake, he felt a renewed sense of hope and responsibility. The experience had left an indelible mark on him, inspiring a deep commitment to the protection and nurturing of the natural world around him. As the investigation reached its conclusion, the full truth about the fish emerged. It was a product of cutting-edge genetic engineering, a creation designed for a purpose that now seemed more reckless than revolutionary. The revelation of its connection to the illegal experiments at the facility shed light on the scope of the environmental tampering and the risks it posed. Reflecting on the past events, Jake's thoughts returned to Mark's cryptic warnings. What had once seemed like paranoia now resonated with chilling clarity. Mark's urgent pleas to avoid the fish and leave the lake took on a new, profound meaning. Jake understood the gravity of the danger he had unknowingly faced, a realization that sent a shiver down his spine. Confronted with the stark truth, Jake grappled with the reality that the fish he had caught was an escapee from the nearby lab. This realization brought a mix of shock and understanding. The oddities of the fish, the silent lake, the urgent warnings, it all made sense now. Jake found himself at the center of a scenario far beyond his wildest imagination. With the facility closed and the experiments halted, Jake took a moment to reflect on the ordeal. The experience had changed him, leaving an indelible mark on his life. He pondered the chain of events that had unfolded from a simple fishing trip, leading to a discovery with far-reaching implications. It was a chapter in his life that he would never forget, one that had reshaped his perspective forever. As the story drew to a close, Jake stood by the lake, a transformed man. He looked forward to a future where he would be an active guardian of the natural world, respecting and protecting its balance. The lake, once a place of leisure, now symbolized a new beginning for him. A commitment to stewardship and a newfound respect for the delicate interplay of nature and human activity.